Quinshon Judkins, RJ Harvey, and Kaleb Johnson all land in prime spots for huge fantasy potential as rookies. We dissect the rookie running back landing spots on today's episode of Locked On Fantasy Football.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. Thank you for making us your first listen every day. I'm one of your co-hosts, Michelle Magdziuk, and when I'm not doing this, I'm a researcher and fantasy analyst with NFL Network.
And I'm your other co-host, Vinnie Iyer. When I'm not doing this, I'm writing about NFL, fantasy, betting, and the draft at sportingnews.com. Check out all the sporting news post-draft grades there right now, including on all the running backs and wide receivers, which we'll get into the next 2 days on the show.
Yeah, we got all of our landing spots now. The draft is completely done. We got some really good landing spots. We got some unfortunate ones for some guys that we like that seem like they might not get the opportunity or they fell a little bit too far in the draft. But we're going to go through the running back landing spots today, get to the wide receivers tomorrow. Before we start with the running backs, I want to let you all know that today's episode is brought to you by Nissan. The all-new 2025 Nissan Armada. Stay tuned for the Armada draft pick of the week later in the show. We already talked about Ashton Jeanty to the Raiders and Amari and Hampton to the Chargers on a Friday show. So if you want to go listen to our insight and a recap of what we believe their fantasy outlook looks like with those landing spots, you can go listen to that Friday show. But we're going to talk about the rest of the running back landing spots now of the notable guys that should have a fantasy impact. And we got to start with Quinshon Judkins to the Browns. He goes very, very early in the second round. He actually goes before his teammate TreVeyon Henderson of Ohio State, who goes to the Patriots a couple picks later. But with Judkins to the Browns, I mean, clear opportunity there. His only competition is Jerome Ford, where Ford is capable, but clearly they wanted an upgrade. Judkins has the speed, the size, the athleticism I think he has the build too to take on a huge workload. So I'm expecting really big things from Judkins moving forward with the Browns.
Yeah, it was fun while it lasted for Nick Chubb, and then we had Kareem Hunt in the mix, and now you can forget about Jerome Ford being a factor anymore. This offense, he did have his opportunities, so we can't say he didn't, and he just disappointed. He just didn't have the talent to pull it off. Well, Judkins does, and when you look at Judkins and the other running back they took, Dylan Sampson, this is basically Kevin Stefanski trying to recreate what he had in Chubb and Hunt, because you've got the change of pace kind of receiving back in Dylan Sampson, and you got the guy that's known for finishing runs well with Ohio State. He was the closer. TreVeyon Henderson was a little bit better in terms of receiving. So they could have gone either way, right? The Browns could have gone with Henderson and then got a power back later. Instead, they go with Judkins, who is probably a better finisher than some of the guys that they could have had later, and you still got a good value pick later in Sampson. So when I look at this, yeah, he steps into that role that we're very familiar with Nick Chubb. I mean, we know what this offense likes to do. I know they have Tommy Rees in there with Kevin Stefanski, which is a little bit new, but Stefanski is still calling the shots here. They want to have a very good 1-2 punch in the running game. And look, if you want to know what the potential of these guys are together, and mainly here Judkins, because he can stay on the field for 3 downs and catch it. We'll see what Dylan Sampson's role is. If they give him enough snaps, I could see it being still a heavy, like I'd say a 55-45 at least. I think it could go way more than that with Judkins if he shows that he can handle himself on third downs, not just the pass protection, but make some catches. Because I think ideally that's what teams want. They don't want to telegraph some plays like this back is in the game, we're more likely to run. This back is the game, we're more likely to throw. So I don't think they want that. But Judkins is developing in the passing game. He's a great power runner. So again, look at what we got with Chubb and Hunt. That is their best scenario here. It's like, can we get that combination to produce again? We know who the better back was. We took earlier. It was Chubb. Hunt was still had some really good value as an RB2. So that's what you're looking for. But Judkins definitely has RB1 upside in this role. And Sampson, I don't think it's going to happen right away, but we might look at him as a flex. But Judkins could have asked for a better spot. He stays in Ohio as well. So it's going to be a great, great production opportunity for him in this new, probably run-heavy offense, whoever's the quarterback.
Yeah, he'll definitely be in consideration as a top 12 guy here to rank it with this landing spot with that talent. Now, RJ Harvey, a guy that you were really liking before the draft, he goes in late second or early third?
Yeah, somewhere there. Yeah.
Yeah, somewhere right there. I'll look that up in a second. But to the Broncos, another fantastic landing spot. I mean, this was one of the best spots that you could get as a running back without Javonte Williams there, with really your only competition being Julian McLaughlin and Audric Estime. They're desperately looking for a starting running back. And Harvey's not like a big guy. He's only 5'8", 205 pounds, but he's fast, very great burst, can really get it done. And we saw him take on a pretty large a decent sized workload at UCF over the last 2 years. He's already 24 years old. So it's not like they need to let him grow anymore, right? They don't need him to progress anymore. They took him, I feel like, to start this year and to give him a heavy workload because he's already at the age where it's like, you need to use him now, or what are you doing?
Yeah, I do like the history of these offensive coaches, and we saw that a little bit with Stefanski. I wasn't sure if the Browns and Broncos were going to go for the power early or the receiving early. And they kind of flipped it on me, where I thought maybe you'd see the Broncos end up with Judkins and then go after a receiving guy later, but it kind of went the other way here. So I do love this pick of Harvey because you have Sean Payton as well and Joe Lombardi. And what do? They like these type of versatile backs who are receiving first in a way. We know how great Alvin Kamara has been, and he continues to be without the influence of these guys. But that's what they wanted out of Javonte Williams. They wanted that versatile back who could do that kind of damage, and he had some receiving skills. They just never materialized there the way they wanted, and the knee injury didn't help. Now you get a guy with a lot of burst, healthy knees, can go out there and run in the big play mode that you're looking for. Take some pressure off Bo Nix as well. He's a very good receiver, so that's going to be an outlet as well to look for. And we know, look, we're not going to say he's going to be like Alvin Kamara and be an automatic 80 catch guy year after year, right? That's not going to be there, but we'll take 40 to 50 balls out of the backfield and then some touchdowns and some burst here. So Alvin Kamara really built the other parts of his game in his career to become a complete fantasy back that we know that was capable of scoring 6 touchdowns in a game. So look, we don't want to go nuts with Harvey, but you can't ask for a better spot. I mean, really, there's no one in this backfield. So again, get another fantasy back between Judkins, Genty, and this pick that really could be a really reliable fantasy starter where you're looking at the top 12 or top 24.
Yeah, with Harvey, it's hard to, I won't be able to put him into the top 12. I'm shocked. So he did go right at the end of the second. That felt a little early for him with NFL draft capital, but you can't ignore that draft capital and the opportunity he's going to get. So he's going to have to be very relevant in our fantasy drafts, even as a rookie. Now, next guy off the board was Caleb Williams to the Steelers. Kaleb Johnson to the Steelers. 3 best landing spots right here that we're going through. Judkins to the Browns, Harvey to the Broncos, and then Kaleb Johnson to the Steelers. And I'm shocked that Kaleb Johnson didn't go ahead of Harvey. He actually went quite a bit behind him. But Johnson, I can't envision him not being the lead back for the Steelers. Like, I get Jaylen Warren is there. He just doesn't have that skill set to be, I don't think, a 200 even, or a 250 carry guy. Like, he's just not that type of player. He should be the change of pace guy. They signed Kenneth Gainwell, but again, change of pace guy. Kaleb Johnson has the build at 6'1", 224 pounds. No, he's not a home run hitter, but that's like what the Steelers go for, right? You think of Najee Harris, you think of James Conner. That's like, those are their type of lead backs that they can just lean on you to get those 3-4 yards at a time, to handle the big workload, to pretty much ask you to do everything. And if you can't get the 60-yard runs, that's okay. And that's not going to be Kaleb Johnson's way that he gains fantasy points, but he is a very capable guy to break at least, 20 yards at a time. It might not be 60, but he can get you those 10, 20 yards. I think he's plenty capable enough to be a great back in this league. And I'm excited for him to get his opportunity with the Steelers.
Yeah, I think you said Caleb Williams because you're just thinking about what the Steelers could be doing at quarterback right now. But at least they solved the running back issue. I think that was just in your head that you're probably a little bit disappointed in your team not coming through there. But they did come through with a running back. Look, This is the guy that I thought was a good fit for them all along. We thought he was going to end up maybe in Chicago. That didn't materialize. They didn't really take a back of note until late. So go figure there with that team or the Vikings. But it was the advantage to the Steelers here to get Johnson. Again, it's another creature of habit type of system here with Arthur Smith. Oh, we lost a power back in Najee Harris. We got Jalen Warren for a change of pace. Let's just replace Najee Harris on early downs and in the red zone. So what I love is you have the exact blueprint on all three of these guys. You have a hint on how they're going to be used. And now it just comes down to their talent and the execution and how much the team is willing to trust them as rookies. And the good news is all these guys can stay on the field. They're not going to be a liability with their quarterbacks in key situations. I think with Johnson, however, you're not going to see him in a lot of receiving situations. So that's already going to curb his value. Where I think you could easily see that with Judkins, developing player in the passing game, and Harvey is already natural for that. So that leads to a big drop-off here. I think Johnson's going to have good value, but I think it's more as a flex play. We need to see this running game in motion and get better, see that production overall with the blocking be there, and we have to see what Warren's role is in relation to him. So right now I think you drop Johnson to kind of flex with some upside status based on the way he can close out drives for the Steelers.
We had three more guys get good draft capital, especially TreVeyon Henderson, who goes at the top of the second round. But each of these guys have competition to earn a role for their rookie season, at least. So we're going to discuss those three landing spots and their fantasy outlook right after a quick break. This episode of Locked On Fantasy Football is brought to you by the Gametime app. Buying tickets to your favorite event shouldn't be stressful. Gametime is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. With killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee, you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun you'll have. I use this app all the time whenever I'm buying tickets for anything for many, many reasons. But I love the ability to see a panorama view of my seat before I buy, so I'm never shocked when I arrive to the event and upset, because I already know exactly what my site will be. It takes seconds to buy tickets, so easy to use, and I'm super impatient, so that's great for me. And then they have the best ticket coverage in the business in case anything goes wrong. You get to take the worries and the guessing work out of buying tickets with Gametime. Just download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms to apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL. That's LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, so we skipped over TreVeyon Henderson here in the top segment, even though he went very, very early in the draft, a couple spots after his teammate Quinshon Judkins went to the Browns. The issue with Henderson going to the Patriots is he has a lot more competition than Judkins does, or any of those top three guys we just talked about, because they have Ramondre Stevenson, who they paid just a couple off seasons ago, and he seems to be the clear-cut lead back, right? He has had some fumbling issues, so maybe that's Henderson's chance to take over. And then there's also Antonio Gibson there, who's kind of that receiving back role, which Henderson thrives in. So a lot more competition than we would prefer, but Henderson's a very, very talented player. He is on the smaller side at 202 pounds, 5'10", but the speed's there, the athleticism's there, the great pass-catching ability is there. So we know he can be good in the NFL, I think, if he gets a chance. It's just how much opportunity will he get as a rookie?
Yeah, we were kind of looking for more out of Stevenson. I think the Patriots are too, like just to be the complete back. I mean, they paid him, and I think he's been a disappointment since then in terms of taking that role. Now you're back to this Josh McDaniels offense, so different mindset, mentality with this team, as well as Mike Vrabel coming in. So it's an open door, right, for Henderson to win this battle and be the lead back and maybe push Stevenson back into kind of the receiving role, and then maybe they cut Gibson if that's the case here. So I think, again, Stevenson came in, I think, touted a little bit as a power back, but then he started to find a skill set in the passing game. Then he couldn't quite put it all together, where I think you look at TreVeyon Henderson, he comes in with that natural passing game gift here. He's got some explosive running ability as well. So I do like his skill set. A little bit reversed from Judkins, his teammate, but still very effective, and they kind of crossed over in that explosiveness and finishing drives in the red zone. So I do like Henderson quite a bit, the player. I still want to invest in him more, maybe even earlier than Stevenson. I think I want to avoid Stevenson in drafts. I wouldn't say earlier necessarily than Stevenson, but I would wait to draft him as a much better value right now. I want the upside back, the new guy coming in, especially with a lot of change in New England. They're just going to blow things up a little bit and think about what they have now with this team. So again, Henderson, again, the talent is there. The talent says I'm going to take him as an RB3, potentially maybe borderline RB4 if other veterans kind of fall to me in the right spots. But when I look at it, RB3 or RB4 right now, but I'd rather, again, take him than the Stevenson as an RB2.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm just going to be staying away from this backfield because now it looks like it could be a three-headed monster. We don't expect the Patriots to be a great offense, right? For all the scoring opportunity or for like a ton of opportunity.
Better, but
snap. Yeah, it should be better, but still probably bottom half of the league. I don't think is rude to say about the Patriots. So I'm probably just going to stay away unless we start to see Henderson really drop in drafts big time. Now, one landing spot I did love, not the best draft capital, but he goes early fourth round. I think it is important that it was very, very early. It was right at the top of the fourth round. Cam Scataboo goes off the board to the New York Giants. Now, I do think Tyrone Tracy has something to be worried about because Scataboo is not a guy you take just to be a change of pace guy. Like, he is the type of guy that's going to wear down defenses. So if you draft him and you plan to use him, he needs a lot of carries in a game. I do also think he's the type of player that coaches are going to absolutely love. Like, he just has that mentality and just, I mean, he's a guy that when you watch him, you kind of just want to run through a brick wall for this dude, right? I love Scataboo and watching him play. He's a great receiving back as well. He's just a strong player that, like I said, will wear down defenses. He had 338 touches at Arizona State this past year, second in the FBS in scrimmage yards and rushing yards behind only Ashton Genty. He has the capabilities. He reminds me so much of James Conner, who didn't get drafted too much ahead of Cam Scataboo in his own draft. So I do think that by the end of the year, Tyrone Tracy and Devin Singletary aren't seeing much of the field while Scataboo is kind of taking over. So I'm excited about this landing spot.
Yeah, I am too. And I think the biggest thing here is Devin Singletary is probably going to be phased out because he's not very good as a receiver. And when he's kind of trying to use his quickness as a runner, he gets outdueled there by Tyrone Tracy. So they'll keep Tracy. I think he's a valuable guy. I mean, keep Tracy in a key role here because he's still valuable. Remember, he's a converted wide receiver, so he does have some special receiving skills that Scataboo, look, he can do a little bit of everything, but that's not necessarily his jam, right, doing that. I mean, he will. If you need to, he'll keep quarterbacks upright and do all that, but he's not going to give you some dynamic open field the way that Tracy can. But Scataboo's going to get all those tough yards. He's going to get probably the goal line opportunities from this team, which Singletary kind of loosely had last year. So those are probably gone for Singletary. Again, it'll be interesting if they just go ahead and look towards cutting Singletary, which could happen, and just make this about Scataboo and Tracy. I think that's where they're headed. He's just an offensive weapon. Like, they want to get him out in the field to do things, and really just another person out there with Malik Neighbors and Tracy. You also have some depth at tight end now, and you also look at Darius Slayton back. Don't forget about him because you have some big arm quarterbacks now between Winston and Wilson and Jackson Dart. These guys can push the ball downfield, and that could really help Slayton versus doing that with Daniel Jones. So, again, there are some weapons on this team. I think this offense is going to have higher upside. It just will. I mean, and if Jackson Dart comes in there and runs, I mean, Wilson doesn't run as much anymore, but Dart could be also running well. That would be great for the backfield too, when you have to worry about the running quarterback. So we want to root for Jackson Dart to win this job. We'll probably get into him a little bit more on his value as we get closer to the Giants season, see if he can win that job over Winston Wilson. But when I look at it, Scataboo makes a lot of sense to complement all that they have. So I'm just excited about this Giants offense. It might finally come together the way that Brian Dable and Mike Kafka want finally to see the production.
Yeah, I'm not thrilled about the quarterback situation, but we'll see how it works out there with Jackson Dart in the future. Now, the last guy here that I want to hit on for the earlier, I'm going to put draft capital. He went right early in the fourth round as well, and that's Bhayshul Tuten. And this was a running back that you were talking about keeping an eye on during the draft, and he goes to the Jaguars. And there was a lot of disappointment with this Jaguars backfield last year with Travis Etienne just completely being a disaster and Tank Bigsby being okay. He was fine, but he's just a guy. Now, I don't know if Tutin is that type of talent to really take over Travis Etienne and take Bigsby, though. He is a smaller guy at 5'9", 206. He's lightning fast at 4.32 speed. His athleticism is off the charts, too. It jumped to 40.5 vertical. Like, totally get all that. But he has fumbled a lot over the last 2 years, 9 fumbles over his 2 seasons with Virginia Tech. That's a worry, with a rookie trying to get some playing time. I actually think with this pick, I feel better about Travis Etienne next year. We were worried that they might take Ashton Genty, and then they waited till the early 4th round. And Tutin is just really not a guy that scares me all too much to take over either of these guys' job, honestly, in Etienne or Bigsby.
Yeah, we just have to see again. We go with some blueprints set before by the coaches, and Liam Cohen is there. So we know what happened last year. We had the Bucky Irving kind of take over from Rachaad White, and Rachaad White was similar to Etienne in the fact that he's a decent runner when needed, but his skill set is more for catching passes and being a complementary receiver. So it really comes down to really Tutin. First, he has to get through Tank Bigsby, because Bigsby is kind of, for lack of better term, the power back here. His name is a little bit misleading, but Bhayshul Tuten, we said he could fit in a zone blocking system. I think you'll see some of those concepts here for the Jaguars. So really, it's an opportunity. And again, Etienne has not had the best run of health. Neither has Bigsby. So this is something could very well develop. I think they'll go in with an open mind. That's how we saw Bucky Irving emerge in Tampa, because there's open mind. Don't forget, we had that one game from Sean Tucker. So Liam Cohen just wants to see who the best production comes from in the backfield. So Tutin, again, has an opportunity, but it's going to be more clearing some hurdles here going forward. But injuries could really create the situation for him, where I think Henderson and Scataboo are going to be more naturally incorporated in the offense to split work with the guys they have, Stevenson and Tracy, respectively. Tutin, just a little bit of a bigger crowd right now with Bigsby and Etienne. So to get there, he's got to beat up Bigsby and prove that he's the better option there to challenge Etienne.
Now, after Tutin and Scataboo went back-to-back in the early 4th round, there were still 17 running backs to be drafted in the NFL draft after those 2 went. So a lot of later round draft capital guys, a lot of guys that are not going to be anything in the NFL, but there is a solid chance that at least 1 or 2 of these guys are going to have an impact in the NFL and have an impact in fantasy football. So we're going to go through a couple guys that we like their landing spot and think that maybe they could have an impact maybe as early as next year. We'll get to that right after a quick break.
All right, this episode of Locked On Fantasy Football is brought to you by Armada, and this is the Armada pick of the week. Our friends at Nissan are going to get the player going that reminds them of the all-new 2025 Nissan Armada. This week, we're highlighting the guy we talked about right at the top of the show. That's Quinshon Judkins. When I think about power and smashing people and going through with strength and just blowing by guys up front, it's definitely Quinshon Judkins. We saw it all the way as he was the centerpiece of the Ohio State running game on the run to the national championship. So he's going to provide some of that punch right for the Browns. And really, he's a player that, again, loves to be there taking the hits and heavy duty, rugged. That's what you're going to get as well. He's confident, capable, much like the Nissan Armada. And he's going to have big dreams here to take over the backfield, be the next Nick Chubb here, much like Chubb took over for Carlos Hyde. So a very good situation for Judkins. It's clear that our top pick here is ready to conquer the road ahead with confidence. And just like you can the new Nissan Armada or any of the outstanding vehicles, take the Nissan Armada, Rogue, or Pathfinder and go find your next big adventure. Again, check out the Nissan Armada, and congratulations to Quinshon Judkins, the latest Armada player of the week. All right, Michelle, we've talked about some backs that are obvious to some degree because of where they were drafted, the situations there are now. Let's look at some other running backs taken in round 4 later. Again, you mentioned the volume, so you probably have to just keep reading and seeing who you like. We mentioned a little bit of Sampson and what his role can be. So who's one guy that you liked that was taken later that we should keep our eye on most?
Yeah, it has to be Jaden Blue to the Cowboys, right? Because the Cowboys were one of the ideal landing spots that we're looking for a running back to go. And they, again, don't focus on running back early in the draft, which is crazy to me. And they don't take a running back until the 5th round. And Jaden Blue is a guy that I brought up really eyeing to see where he goes. I figured he'd be a 4th or 5th round pick, and he lands in a great spot. I mean, his competition is 2 guys that have already kind of failed in the NFL, or I guess at this point in their career, and Javonte Williams and Miles Sanders. Now, Jaden Blue, I don't know if he's capable of being a workhorse back in the NFL. He's 5'9", 196 pounds. Now, we've seen guys that are smaller size, have plenty of work and be good, right? But he never really got to truly be a workhorse back with Texas, or even like a high volume back with Texas. He was behind Bijan Robinson and his 2 years ago or 3 years ago, I guess, Jonathan Brooks 2 years ago. And then last year he had to split time with Trey Weisner. Now, he was the much more productive running back in the Ohio State backfield last year by far, as both a rusher and a receiver. And he is a great receiving back. He has the explosiveness. He's very agile runner. It's just, can he handle 200 plus touches in an NFL season? I guess we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, I think the biggest guy that I'm looking at, I'm going a little bit down, but before I do that, Jaden Blue is pretty obvious here. I mean, he ends up with the Cowboys. He doesn't have a lot of competition. Rico Dowdle's gone, so now you have Javonte Williams being the biggest competition. We just talked about how quickly the Broncos are ready to replace him. So Blue has some really nice capacity here for the Cowboys, and I think they're going to look at every opportunity to get him on the field. Now, I'm going to scroll all the way down, and maybe I have some history to go with this. I'm going all the way to Brashard Smith to the Chiefs. And again, who did they get in the 7th round that was a really productive running back of late? Isaiah Pacheco. So what the Chiefs do is they don't care about where they drafted a guy. We've seen that at their offensive line. We've seen that at corner. They're going to open up the competition and say, can you be the guy to deliver here? And so Brashard Smith, I was looking, right? Were they going to take it back? Are they going to take it back? Okay, it wasn't Omari and Hampton. It's not all these other guys that are going. DJ Giddens and Devin Neal, all these guys going off the board. I said, did the Chiefs really want to take a running back? They probably should. And they wait and wait. And Brashard Smith should not have lasted this long. He was a very good overall runner from Southern Methodist. Again, he can really clean up a lot of this stuff. And remember, Pacheco's had some major injuries. He's a 7th round pick himself. You also have Kareem Hunt, who basically was added because Pacheco was hurt and kind of a retread. So this backfield competition is open. Look, remember they were touting like Carson Strong and all that. So they will look at everybody possible at running back. And really, that's what makes the Chiefs so good. They evaluate the entire roster, knowing that they draft well, and they're going to find guys like this that really overachieve from their draft spot. So Brashard Smith, I would not rule him out for a role right away. I mean, this is a revolving door. We've gone back to Hunt the first time. He was kind of a sleeper on that team. And then we've just seen different guys. I mean, Damian Williams and Jerick McKinnon, veterans they've picked up from anywhere. So anybody really can be productive in the Chiefs offense. And when you get going in the Chiefs offense, as we've seen with Pacheco, you have an opportunity to do a ton. So again, a lot of these other guys taken were backups or change of pace, and we got to wait and see. But Smith would be the guy I keep an eye on in camp along with Blue.
Yeah, I think those are all really good points. And then one last guy I want to point out here, he's not going to have the opportunity to compete for the starting job, but DJ Giddens to the Colts. Mm-hmm. It stinks. He goes a lot later than I thought he would. I don't love the landing spot because he's not going to have the opportunity to actually compete. But now I do think we have a true handcuff to Jonathan Taylor, right? Yeah. If Jonathan Taylor were to get injured, I do think DJ Giddens would be the next man up. I do think he's capable of a 3-down role. So that's just keep an eye on him for a handcuff situation. If you do want to have that insurance to Jonathan Taylor, if you were to take Jonathan Taylor there in the middle of the first round. So that is it for today's episode. I want to thank you all for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NFL Scouting. The NFL draft is over, but the roster moves and news never stops. Host Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino will make you the most informed NFL fan this offseason. Find Locked On NFL Scouting on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. We will be back tomorrow talking about the rookie wide receiver landing spots and our expectations for them moving forward. We will talk to you then. Bye, y'all.